Let's talk about balloon framing. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things about balloon framing. Let's talk about it in this video. Believe it or not, that was not auto-tuned. So let's get into it. Why are we balloon framing? How do we go about balloon framing with two people? And the biggest question of all, how much helium did it take to balloon frame? Let's get into it. Hey Kyle,
Yeah.
Is everything okay in there?
It's going all right.
What's taking you so long? Are you constipated? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Psyllium fiber husk. That does wonders.
Okay, man.
Prune juice works too when you get to be your age. Hey, good morning everybody. So Kyle and I, we are starting that house, which is the same as this house, but this one's reversed. So that means that this wall here is that wall. So we just called an audible. I just called the lumberyard to order long 2x6. We're gonna balloon frame it, put soffits on, frame the little fireplace bump out. We have to wait on the window, so we're only gonna be able to side from that up. We're gonna do the same thing to this wall, which is that wall, sided all the way up, 2-story balloon. That gable wall will be there, 2-story ballooned. These will all be standard height. The back will be standard height. So I'm kind of pumped. We haven't gotten to do this in a long time. We finally have a lot that's conducive, and we have the truss jib. So stay tuned. This should be fun, especially because of the drone. Okay, so just to go into this in a little bit more detail, balloon framing is framing full height. So normally here in the United States, we might frame 8 or 9 or 10 foot walls on the main floor, put the floor on top of that, and then put the next set of walls on top of that. Rinse, repeat. Rinse, lather, repeat, as they say. That's called platform framing. So in this case, and it's an old school way of going about it, is you frame full height from the bottom plate of the first floor, in this case, to the top plate of the second floor. That was about 18 feet. In round numbers, we'll just call it 18 feet even, just to keep it simple. So I ordered 20-foot 2x6s. We already had some for plates, but I went ahead and ordered some more and we picked them up at the lumberyard. Because everybody was super busy, couldn't get delivery, and it was our fault. We changed this last second. So here is the reason why we chose to do this. It's just 2 of us. So this saves us a tremendous amount of ladder work because as you're going to see here in just a couple of minutes, not only are we going to frame inside this, or sheet this wall, oh, spoilers, we're also going to side it. So Kyle went ahead and pre-cut all of the studs. Notice what we just did there a moment ago is we squared the wall. So basically all of the king studs, which are the studs on either side of the openings, those are all doubled. Now that's not structurally required, but it does stiffen up the wall for the lift. So that's the reason for that. 1 3/4 by 9.5 inch LVL are our headers. The window on the right is a 6020, so 6 foot wide, 2 foot tall. The opening on the top left is for the fireplace. Really easy framing. It's exactly like framing a wall with longer studs. That's literally it. Kyle takes all of those cutoffs from the 20 footers that were cut into 18 foot studs, again in round numbers. He cuts by eye. I go and install them flat. Now, we like to use 4x6 blocking about mid-span because all of our sheathing has to be fully nailed along its perimeter. For seismic reasons, those become our shear walls. We like 4x6 blocking through the middle because it just keeps the wall stiff when we lift it. Now, in this wall, I made a mistake on the blocking. Notice that blocking row about 1 foot down from the top. That was stupid. I can't remember what I was thinking. That put the 4x6 blocking really at the bottom of the ceiling joist. So whenever you sheet a wall, just sheet over the opening, use a router to route out the sheeting. It's easy. Yes, the router bit spins, well, it technically spins faster. Pushing the router is a little bit slower than a circ saw. However, the whole process is faster. All of those scraps are still usable because they have straight edges, so we keep them. Getting back to the balloon framed wall, we only order 8-foot sheets because they move around less when we get wet. They're just a little bit more dimensionally stable. The big 4x10 sheets can kind of move around on us since we're framing 2 foot on center. Yes, this balloon framed wall is 2 foot on center, and you're going to see how stiff it is. So there's 1 row of 8-foot sheets at the bottom, 1 row that I'm standing on right there, 1 foot at the top, and then from that lower block line, it's gonna reach down past the rim into the mud sill, and then like you can see in that house in the far distance, it's going to reach down another 4 feet to catch that lower floor wall. All of the nailing is 6 inches everywhere. Normally we're 6 inches around the edges and 12 inches in the field. However, our engineer said because you're doing 24 centers, go 6 inch on center through that middle stud. So it's the same number of nails per panel, whether we were framing 16 inches on center or 24. So that's just a handy little trick there. So really it doesn't save us any time on nailing. This is zip system. So we tape all of those seams. So if you are going to have a tablet on the job site, keep it in the shade. So this tent, man, we bought this for like 60 bucks at Lowe's to keep stuff dry in the winter. It's awesome. Anyway, the 2-story wall is all framed, sheathed, and taped. I just gotta roll the tape. I'm gonna go fill up with some water first. And then we'll snap lines for layout and get the fireplace framed. And then probably in the morning we'll get the closed soffits. So that's the roof line. This is a pretty easy wall. So easy, even AwesomeFramers could do it. Not well, by the way, not well at all. I'll get into how we lay out siding in the next video. There's a lot more to talk about here. Pretty simple, but here Kyle's gonna go ahead and roll that tape. That zip system now is our weather-resistant barrier, water-resistant barrier. We used to say weather-resistant barrier, WRB. Now everybody says water-resistant barrier, WRB. I just remember the old days. I'm getting old. May not have known this, but I recently turned 44. Anyway, so now that's done. So what we do is we lay out on each side for our lap siding. So we just figure out what needs to hang below the mud sill, do some simple math. There you can see I'm recording. I'm gonna put that in the next video. So there's Kyle laying out 6 inches. There's me laying out 6 inches. Then we go ahead and we snap lines all the way across before the windows are in, because then we don't have to lay out around the fireplace. We don't have to lay out like over windows or over window trim. So it only takes a second. Super easy to keep all of your siding straight this way. Then what we do is we tape the zip to the side of the end studs. There you can see it. So we fold it over. Then we snap a line 1 inch back from that. And that's where we're going to stop our siding, because as you'll see in the next video, we're going to put corner boards over the top. Here is the fireplace framing. Super, super easy. The opening, of course, is a little smaller. We want to get those plates up high enough that with the overhanging things that we're away from the venting for that fireplace. Those 2x12s you're looking at, that's so that we can get full cavity insulation. Also, we're using up our footing boards, so that's why they look a little scuzzy. We try not to use our footing boards more than once. We try to use them up throughout the build, and this particular job required 24 wide by 12 inch deep. There it's just, I'm sheeting it with zip. Nothing special about that. It's not structural. We need it though, because that is part of our weather resistant barrier. We want to tape all of those seams. As high performance builders, we're aiming for less than 3 air changes per hour. By the Washington State Energy Code, we will probably be down around 1.5 to 2 when this one's done. That's a whole separate process. I'll do a video on that later. This just makes it really easy to tape everything without getting on ladders. If we knew how to install roofing, if we wanted to take that liability, we'd roof it at this point too. Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Check that out. It is a gorgeous day here. Okay, so we had to get out of here yesterday before we could get the fireplace built, so we are just about ready. Kyle's just grabbing some trim. We'll get the fly rafters and fascia on. Side this wall, but we will not be lifting it today because it's actually pretty windy. Monday we'll lift it first thing, and then we're gonna frame basically this entire downstairs 2 stories. We're gonna put the gable on that wall, but not the far wall. But since it's just he and I, we're trying to be a little deliberate, especially because he's going on vacation at the end of next week. So then I'll either be alone or maybe we'll have somebody, I don't know. But anyway, happy Friday. If you've watched any of my videos on siding, you know we are huge fans of LP Smart Side products. This is not sponsored. That is our siding and trim of choice. So that's 5/4 by 8 fascia, and little trim on the side. Fly rafters is what we call them, packed out so we can tuck the trim. Kyle went ahead and installed the eaves metal so that we can tape that to the roof deck as well. Now it is literally just a matter of figuring out what we want to do for siding as far as what lengths. Typically we start out with a 16, -4, so it's a 16, a 12, an 8, and a 4. That means we end up with basically 0 waste. That little seam on the right is a little small. We don't really care. It doesn't hurt anything. It's not against the installation instructions. Everybody's got a matter of taste. That joint will disappear on the wall and it's 2 stories up. So that's our thinking. Better use of scrap. So Kyle's job as the cut man is just to keep me in siding. Then you'll notice I'm installing little 5-inch by 8-inch metal pieces at the butt joints. That's not required by LP, but we are going for as maintenance-free as we can be for the future homeowners. Caulking is a maintenance item that, according to our warranty, needs to be inspected and touched up once a year. We don't want our customers to have to get on ladders and do that. So if you do the slip sheet, or pan flashing as some people call it, you now have protection, not really against water, that's not the issue, according to the tech guys at LP, but rather it's for UV protection. So, here's one thing you need to know, and I'm going to follow up on this in the next video. If you choose to do this, and this is an approved installation by LP, you need to put an additional coat of paint on the ends because they're not going to be sealed, and that meets their warranty. So as you can see, this is just repetition. I think this only took us like 20 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating. It just goes fast. A little hard on the back, but that's okay every once in a while. You might be wondering, what kind of a drone do I have that can sit up there for all this time? I'm not going to tell you. You should be able to tell from the shadow. It's like a giant sundial. Hey, that didn't take very long. Now we're just going to do the closed soffits, brace them, finish the siding, and probably get out of here. My back is full of galactic acid from all this bending over stuff. Remember, we are trying to do as much to these walls as we can before we lift them. So here is our framing detail. I think I can show it in closer detail in the next video. I've got some other footage on a different wall. Basically, we draw out the overhang so we know where the bottom of the subfascia height is when it returns to the wall. Nail a 2x6 on that. There it is, you can see it. 2x6 nailed down, 2x6 subfascia. That is LP vented soffit, 16 inches wide. So we make our soffit 16 1/4. So that means the blocks are 13 3/4. Make sure they do not land where your rafters go. There it is, like every, 4 feet. It's pretty haphazard. We go ahead and lay out for the rafters too. That 16-inch soffit acts like a strong back and keeps this wall insanely stiff during the lift. Also means that we don't need as much bracing as we go. Also, the fireplace is done. We sided it. Can you see the mistake? We couldn't. I'll give you a hint. We didn't hang the siding and corner boards down low enough to cover that rim. So there was some minor repair work, but it was only about 5 feet off the ground. Now you can see the block line. That's going to tie down to the mud sill. Very little waste. This is a very simple process. You're just building a taller wall. That's it. So you got to make sure your studs are straight and that your panel seams land on studs. But if you can build an 8-foot wall, you can build an 18-foot wall. Lifting it is a different matter, though. So I left this at real time. I debated about doing this because it feels slow to me as the viewer. But for those of you that maybe aren't experienced framers, now you can see how it is that we sheet a wall. So this is a front wall that's going to tie into the wall that we were just siding. We always, once it's square, make sure everything's straight, get all of your blocking in. Then we align those sheets. Notice that we're going right over the opening, but I use the handle of my forklift, the handle of my hammer to basically just start a gouge. I bet you can guess what that's for. So Kyle is going to be the nailer on this wall. I am the donkey, or the pack animal, if you will. I've always been told that I'm built like my Grandpa Joe. He was a farmer and a very hard worker. Being short and squat, turns out, is probably exactly the body type for framing. There it is, it's the router again. Make it nice and simple. Oh, let's address the elephant in the room. I am wearing a hydration pack. It's It's made by TrueWork. It's a smaller one. I used to wear a Camelback way back in like 2004, 2005, 2006, something like that. I did a little article for the Journal of Light Construction. I look like a moron. I felt so embarrassed. However, I had 1.5 liters of water, and I think I filled that thing up twice a day because it was summertime. It's kind of hot. While it looks stupid, you feel way better when you stay constantly hydrated. And yes, I look like an idiot. But who cares? It's not like anybody's going to see it on YouTube or something. So Kyle's kind of doing nailing, and he's coming with me to tack sheets. And then, in part because the compressor, these high pressure guns are great. Compressors are not like just loaded with air where you can't outrun it. The fact is, you can outrun those compressors. So our goal is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I'm sure you've heard that, but maybe like not super slow. But nice, steady, even work. Because we're gonna lift these walls and they're gonna be really high in the air, we're not trying to race the egomaniacs on social media or elsewhere who think that you just have to run at a breakneck speed. No. Quality, consistency, and longevity. You want your tools to last. And by tools, your body and your brain. You can replace and you will replace nail guns, routers, saws. You can't replace your body. So go fast enough that you make money, but not so fast that the quality suffers. There, I'm getting off my soapbox. You've probably seen this trick performed much better by other people. Basically feed out, let's say that my piece that I'm cutting is 16 inches. Then I extend 16 inches out of the tape. I use the tape to ride against the zip. Don't use your finger, you will end up with splinters. Use the tape. This doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little short. In fact, you'll notice here in just a moment, it was a little long. That's okay, I just trimmed it with the router. Remember, one of our main goals is to try to use as much of the material intelligently as we can. So that piece, the 2 pieces that are still in the window opening, we save all those. We use them where we can, where it makes sense, because we do have structural requirements. Can't use super small pieces, but often we can pack out our trim with it or use it elsewhere. We try not to throw that away. Again, the router is just easy. If I was training a new guy, and by the way, we started using a router in 2001. We started using cordless routers, I think 2 years ago. I think exactly 2 years ago, maybe coming up on 3. Because it's idiot-proof. I can teach a new guy how to do this, and he will cut perfect windows after doing it once. Then he just develops his, see there I had to trim it. Then he develops his rhythm. So don't be afraid. And if you burn up the router, who cares? Go buy another one. They're inexpensive. The router bits aren't, so don't hit nails. It's a little 1/4-inch white side bit. I'll try to put the link in the description. But don't be afraid to use your tools to make you money. If you have to buy them, that's okay. You should be setting aside money from every job. You should basically be charging a rental fee to your tools to every job because you will have to replace those. It's also a tax write-off. And they're not super expensive. Now, one more thing. Ask me how many routers I have ever burned up. 0 routers, whether they were corded or cordless. We've never burned one up, and we push them hard. They usually, I think the only times we got rid of them is when we finally broke the handles. We used to have a Bosch 3 1/4. I think we went through 2 or 3 of those in about 10 years. I think we got about 4 or 5 years out of those before it fell off the house or something, or the handle got broken and just becomes difficult to use. So take that for what it's worth. The opinion of some guy on YouTube who you've never met, and let's be honest, might not even be a real person. Probably isn't. I mean, do you see the legs on that guy? Those things are like from a superhero movie. Just kidding. They're all natural, by the way. Just do some bike riding and climb a lot of stairs. That'll do it. Walk everywhere on your tiptoes. That'll do it. One last word of wisdom. If you do not have a cordless blower, get one. It doesn't have to be super powerful, but keeping the work area clean, not only is it safer, if you keep your job site clean or your work area clean, don't you find that you feel less anxiety? I do, and I was that guy that never cleaned anything when I was younger. It was all about just trying to get the wall done. It's much more peaceful when you have a clean job site. Now I need to go and fold all of the laundry that's on the floor in my bedroom, because if my wife was able to hear me right now, she would be mocking me. True story. Yes, Kyle is not breaking a speed record there. What he is doing is being very deliberate. These are shear walls on either side of those windows. The better job that we do at nailing, the stronger the wall is when we lift it, therefore safer. And, of course, in an earthquake is what we hope. The sheeting is hanging out because the next wall after this one is up. See, we're gonna slide this wall when we lift it. We're gonna tie it into that wall you just saw aside. And you'll see how that goes together. So you gotta plan out all the details, but again, it's just like you would an 8 or 9 or 10-foot wall. It's just taller. You save a lot of time balloon framing, by the way, because you only have one set of plates to lay out. When you run your studs, you're only handling studs once. So you're actually a little less than half the work. And then sometimes you're a little more than double the work because of like you have a window on top of a window. Like let's say, for example, instead of those windows being the same width, the upper one was a little narrower, then it can get a little tedious because you gotta lay out the header. But by virtue of not getting on ladders to side and do some of these other things, we figure this takes about 1/4 the time when it's all said and done.
So how is this shifting? The dots are like totally off on this end. That's weird.
So I've had quite a few people on Instagram especially ask, do we really always roll the tape? And the answer is yes. We've been building in this community for 20 years. Callbacks are always more expensive than the time it takes to do something like roll the tape. Do a test for yourself. If you put tape on the wall, put a piece that you roll right next to one that you don't roll, check them after a week. That'll make you a believer. Take the time to roll it. And since you're going to take the time to roll it, do it the smart way and don't bend over. We've already spent the whole day bent over. So get that fiberglass painter's pole. We don't break those unless...
All right, so yesterday, we one rolled, one unrolled. So my twin brother Steve here is going to do a building science lesson on why we roll the tape.
Well, you can see here on the one that's rolled, the surface of the zip is micro contoured. So it's actually a little bit more square footage. So if you think about how Velcro works, right? Velcro actually comes out and there's these little prickly things that are able to not only grab it, but grab it around the side. So the minute you roll the tape and you leave it on there, that adhesive works its way into these nooks and crannies. And while you think it's just a surface applied material, it's actually going on the side of those contours and increasing the surface area. And we have this one here that we basically just put up and went down, ran our hand down and said, hey, we're done with that. You can definitely see the difference there. But I think the real revealing part is when we do the pull test, right? So if you want to pull this one, I'll let you be the puller.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm stronger.
Well, you are much stronger. Well, and it's like shorter, so you probably have better leverage.
Thank you for putting it out at level, right?
But you can see it is pretty darn hard to pull that down. And you can see how the adhesive is very continuous across that tape face. If we go over to this one and we pull it and do the same thing, you'll see that the tape is somewhat intermittent. And it basically just, there's small little bites and then they disappear.
I can see it's more smeared in there, right?
And it's catching, so it's basically just catching these high grooves, and then those high grooves disappear, and then it grabs the high groove again. So there is clearly a need to roll the tape.
Yeah, we only did this, what, like 18 hours ago?
Yeah, we did it yesterday afternoon. So, anyways, roll the tape.
For some reason, somebody accidentally drives over it in the forklift. Okay, so here's the thing. I wanted to show you all the lift in real time. Sped up things look a lot faster. Sped up things can look a little shakier than they actually are. Like you're gonna see the wall, like in the opening portion of this video, you could see that wall really moving around, and it maybe it kind of frightens you a little bit, but you're gonna watch it in real time. So here's the truss jib. The truss jib is rated for far more than this wall weighs, because we are going to pick this wall up and put it in place. We're not going to, notice that as I lift, first of all, it's only toenail to the ground because we want it to come off the floor. I'm gonna drive it into place. Those toenails do a fantastic job of holding. What Kyle's doing is he's keeping me boomed out and centered. So what you'll notice is like the side that's closer to the forklift will start to dip as I drive because the jib is going past the center point. So then Kyle will have me boom out and it straightens. At a certain point though, yeah, now we're a little past. That's okay because he knows I'm gonna drive forward and turn. So we framed that wall hanging off the deck toward the back about a foot. And that way we were out of the way of those front guardrails. Remember, we had guardrails on the side until that wall was sighted. So you take those off just before you lift. This is real time, so you're hearing the straps creak, you're hearing the sound of the wall move, you're hearing the sound of the forklift. So I'm gonna go ahead and just shut up for a few minutes.
I couldn't remember where you kind of ended. Yeah, there you go. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. Whatever you feel like doing, just do it. Yeah. I'm gonna try to keep you somewhat centered too, so that way it doesn't go. Maybe move out a little bit. If you want to try to go up.
Okay, so let me chime in here. You probably are having the question, especially hearing all that creaking. That's just the sound of the wall moving. It's the sound of the strap connected to the hook up on the truss jib. You'll see the anchors that we have that attaches us to the wall. Here's the question I want to address. Do you have to worry about the flex in those windows? No. We've done this with, I think you might see it in part 1 or part 2. Can't remember. Big 6-foot windows, there's no flex. A fully sheathed wall with the double trimmers and all that stuff. See, this is why we take the time to slow down a little bit, because we know we're saving time. So let's just slow down a little and do it right. So double kings, that wall, you see that barely flexed. And it took quite a bit to finally get it to come off the floor. So Kyle's watching it. Once it comes up, I stop and we just let it slide and find center. Can you tell we got the rigging points right? Yeah, it's nice and level. Now what Kyle's gonna do, and I'm gonna speed this up, he's gonna have me go up enough that he can basically beat all of those toenails out of the way. We'll speed that up because nobody wants to watch that in real time. I don't. Oh, and just let me mention before we get to that, I'm driving very slowly. Notice, real soft touch with the machine. My right hand is on the joystick. My left hand's on the steering wheel, and you drive 2-footed. 1 foot on the accelerator, 1 foot on the brake. Nice, gentle, and slow. Never worry about being too slow. Let's just say it that way. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Be gentle. So one thing that becomes intuitive as you operate telehandler is that as I lower, think of the arm on the forklift, the boom. Think of that as like the radius in a circle. As I go down, the wall actually will go out. As I go up, it comes back. Also, as I boom out, it goes up and out. So Kyle's keeping all of that in mind as he signals. I'm also keeping that in mind, and at times I might honk and let him know that I would prefer that we didn't boom out any farther. Let me go down. I prefer to keep these as close to the ground as possible. So I don't think we were even more than 4 feet off the ground at any point during this lift. That's just, it makes me feel more comfortable. The lower it is, I don't know, just the better. Remember, we're rigged for way more than what this wall weighs. Would you like to know what the wall weighs? Here's the number. Okay. So what Kyle's doing is he is booming me down, and that's bringing the wall right out to the corner where we want it. Since that side's touching first, what he's going to do when the forklift has most of the weight, he's going to bring it right to the line where he wants it, and then he's going to fasten it with the Simpson SDWS structural screw. It pulls the wall down. It also means that for some reason we need to move it, we can. So there's a pro tip for you. Those things, you could use GRKs, Fastenmaster, whatever, but you want a nice big structural screw with like the big head on it. So he's using his foot to guide it to the line while he's signaling me down. I'm also paying attention to his body language. So it's not just that he's signaling me down, but I can tell by how he's moving his hand how fast he wants me to come down. And we're going to stop just shy. He's going to check it again. At this point, the forklift still has most of the weight. Yes, gravity has the weight, but the forklift is holding it just enough off the wall that he can essentially kick it to the line. That's awesome. We don't want to fasten it to the line though, because we still have other walls to frame and we want to keep it just a little bit of room. What you'll see as we go through the video is the back wall in this house, we only framed 1 story high, and that's so we had access through the back to set beams. And you'll see that probably in the next video. Okay, it's done. Now it's time to land the drone. And Kyle's grabbing a 12-foot tripod ladder. Super stable. This ladder's awesome. We're going to use a 20-foot brace to brace these walls. And you're going to notice that we use those same structural screws for all of our bracing. Nails in cleats are not enough for a wall this size. Think of it as a big wind sail. I was recently on a very small sailboat in San Diego, and those small sails, we were scooting across the water. So better safe than sorry. There were some real cocky people on Instagram. Frankly, it's reckless to be overconfident on this. We like to start at the ends. So Kyle, I'm going to hold that 2x6 up. Kyle's just adding 1 screw so that it pivots. I think you're going to be able to hear it here, but we go ahead and we just plumbed it to the block line. That was good enough for what we're doing. This is a temporary brace.
All right, let me set up the laser. I'll give you this guy. You know, I can do this. I can help you. Off. I think there you go. Now, started. Okay. Go your way. Right there. Okay. Yeah, those 6 inches. I have 3 inches if you need it. All right, half one.
So the problem there was the big 6-inch screw. Once it pulls through the 1.5-inch rim, it has no more threading to keep pulling, so it just spins. So I went ahead and added a 3-inch instead, and then popped this one out. Yeah, not everything goes perfectly.
All right, you want one in the middle?
And this video got a ton of hate on Instagram. So we like to screw the cleats down. I was able to aim for frame, or Kyle aimed for framing. We cut along the floor because this gives us more room for that 2x6 instead of scribing a line. And yeah, I made 2 cuts. Big deal. A couple guys made a good suggestion though. If I ride the saw on top of that block, I could avoid making 1 cut. Whatever. Now, I didn't get a chance to show this entire process. Kyle has the laser about 4 inches off underneath where he's at, and he's going to measure that off the wall, and then typically we can just drag the wall back. With 2 people, it did not work in this case, so we ended up building a little lever and pulling the wall back. Remember, this is mostly temporary because where that guardrail is, that other wall is built and it's ready to be installed. So that is going to be the next step. Okay, so there is some steady progress. We've got the big wall that we just lifted with the siding in it. Then we had the front wall, which was ready to go. It would be top right in this particular case. That was dropped into place and connected and then braced. Then the next day we worked on a few more walls. We tried to build as many as we could so that we could just get into setting mode. So this particular wall that we're about to lift, only really a couple feet of it is exterior wall, but it goes all the way upstairs through the master bedroom, and then a beam inside that room will land and carry the roof. That will make much more sense later. But here's another lift. These are small walls. You can see it's sheets centered, just the way layout worked. I pulled all layout from the back and from that top, what would that be? The back top corner, the northeast corner. Here, let's be a little clear. So that's how it works. So we went ahead and carried the sheathing inside with zip because it was a shear wall and it was easier just to do this. So I would say this video is more of an introduction to balloon framing, and we're going to get into it in a little bit more detail in the next video. Basically, you can see that we're just building a giant puzzle. Because the walls are so big, we have to plan out the floor space. So we just go in order. In that case, we started with the big wall and then we kind of looped around counterclockwise. It's all very deliberate. It's also helpful that it is only actually 2 people. There's not a lot of room on this site. Notice that our access is basically from the back. So Kyle and I are trying to save as much ladder work as possible. So we build them big. Because we have an approved cage for the forklift, I can boom Kyle up or vice versa. We can connect the walls, strap them together at the top. As we boom down, we can nail all the overlapping sheeting. So as we're going, we're also bracing those walls. Because remember, safety is huge. We're building giant sails. So we want to be very cognizant of that. So I just go ahead and pick the wall up. Notice it's my job to be gentle because in this case, Kyle's not going to bother signaling me unless there's something I need to be aware of. Otherwise, it's just getting that wall up. And then we're going to go ahead and drive it into place. We're going to fasten it down and then we're going to connect it. And we just work our way around. One unanticipated benefit. It was record temperatures here in the Pacific Northwest this summer, but look at all of that shade. So that was really nice. Keep your tools from melting, keep your lunch from melting. That was a very nice side effect. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the third time we built this house. You can see one time there in the distance. We had good enough weather, the ground was firm, and this made for a much more fun process. So stay tuned for part 2 and potentially part 3. I want to get into siding layout in a little bit more detail. We're going to get into how do we frame the floor? How's that all work? How did we arrive at our block lines specifically? I'm going to get into that in the next video. A little bit more detail on the closed soffits and how that stiffens the wall. And then we'll do a walkthrough of the house completed because we recently finally finished siding it. So much stuff has been back ordered. On this house, I think we took 4 window deliveries because of back orders. This was a fun process for us. I know you're gonna have questions. Ask them below and I will try to get to those answers in the next video. In fact, your questions will probably inform some of the editing on the next video. Above all, please be safe. Everything you're seeing here is dangerous. There's a lot of risk. You can't just blow into it. So be thoughtful. Please be safe out there, everybody. Do not want you to get hurt. We don't want to get hurt. We all have much better things to do than work and injure ourselves. So be safe. Oh, and if you want to, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and maybe share it with maybe 1,000 of your best friends. See you guys in the next video. In today's episode of Rebuild It with AwesomeFramers, watch how Timmy decides to nail 2 trimmers together, blasting the living daylights out of them, and then promptly realizing he didn't need a double trimmer. What's he going to do? He's going to rebuild it. First of all, the Sawzall is your best friend. Second to that, a pry bar is your second best friend. Now watch the master nail puller at work. Never once did he shed tears. He promptly got busy rebuilding it. On next week's episode of Rebuild It with AwesomeFramers, welcome to Balloon Framing Part 2. It turns out that as I've been editing, I have way more content than just 2 or 3 videos. So we're gonna go long form and hopefully do this in 3 parts, but I bet you it's gonna be 4. What I wanted to show with this particular wall, this is a front room, actually it goes to the left where the left guardrail is. I have 2 204s on the lower floor for the powder room and the pantry. And I have a centered, I think it was a 4040 up above, maybe it's a 3040 for the upstairs utility room. Because of the 2 windows at the bottom portion of this wall, the engineer wants straps across at the sill and at the header. And that's called force transfer around opening. You can do a Google search on that. Pretty common engineering detail. Basically, we've just punched a bunch of holes in our shear wall, and because of the height, etc., that's the detail. So, that means that I need to lay out my wall for a few things when it comes to blocks. Number 1, I want 4x6 blocking where the strapping is gonna go, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Second, I need panel edge blocking for my shear walls. That's the flat 2x6s. And third, I need blocking for fire stop. One of the major concerns that we have about balloon framed walls from the old days is the fact that fire can get into those long stud bays and get anywhere. It can get into the floor system, it can get into the attic. So I'm trying to balance all of that. In addition to that, and I'll show this in just a little bit, because I have a 2x6 at the top and bottom of my LVL header, essentially that is fire stopped. What we're trying to do is make every stud bay no more than 10 feet between blocking. So that's why there's a mixture between the flat blocking, the 4x6 blocking, and blocking that we would call on edge. Notice that I cut all of those 2x6 blocks by eye, Partially that's because, one, I trust myself, but two, I've eyeballed and either run a string or straightened the long studs. And then all the end blocks I cut an eighth short. Now, here's just the obligatory. You're gonna notice in just a moment. By the way, I was working alone, so there it is. How many framers does it take? Well, if you clone yourself, at least 3. So I will say this. At 44 years of age, I find that being bent over for walls like this, I need to take more frequent breaks, especially if I'm working alone. So what better thing to do with that time than to take dronies, which is the drone version of a selfie. Okay, I don't mind saying I'm struggling today. It is definitely a Monday. So here's our 2-story wall. 2040, 2040, then 3040. Solid blocking because I have to, this is force transfer around opening, which means solid coil strap. Blocking there and up there is for panel edges. Anyway, but hey, check out that sweet hat. That's quite the pick-me-up. It can make even an ugly framer look less ugly. Since all of our layout started on the left-hand side of that, let's just say from this perspective, if north is up and south is down, all my layout started from the northwest corner, coming forward and then going left to right or east-west. So that's why I can't just start with a 4-foot stud on one end. So I start in the middle, I route it, I put pieces on, snap a line, and I cut those. Now the reason I did this is so that I could actually cut in about 1/4 of an inch. That wall, once it goes up and it butts the next wall, I don't want any reason for it not to be able to pull nice and tight. A question I got in the last video, and it's a question we get pretty common. Frankly, I should have covered it in the last video. Why don't we stagger our wall sheets? So notice that I put the middle sheet down on the first row and then left and right, and I did exactly the same thing up above. What that means is that our long panel edges, the 8-foot edge, railroads. So think of railroad tracks. That's the exact same thing that happens here. We don't stagger our sheets. So the question is, why not? Because the code tables don't reflect any benefit from that. Our panel edges are required to be blocked, so we've got our 6 inches around the panel edges. It doesn't matter if we stagger them. Because we don't have high winds, that's not really an issue for us. I've talked to our engineer about it. Now, in Tor Madison's book, which I'll try to link below, Shear Wall Basics, he does mention that you can have 20% less deflection if you stagger the seams. But that doesn't really matter because our wall's already properly designed and has a safety factor to meet the earthquake loads. So one thing he said too is that if we were concerned about that 20% less deflection, we could just tighten up the nailing spacing to like maybe 5 inches. And that way there's no additional labor for blocking. Now let's get into force transfer around opening. Remember I put those 4x6 blocks in? The top of those blocks was to the underside of my sill, and I went ahead and matched that with the tape. This is because I'm about to put 10 billion nails into this thing, and I feel like it's just some cheap insurance. So I'm snapping a line because I want my coil strap to be straight. I am not OCD, I do not need it to be perfectly straight, but it does actually go down a little faster if I have a line to follow. So this is Simpson Strong Tie CS, or coil strap, CS20. I think it's a 75-foot roll, don't quote me on that. Here's how I like to install it. I keep it in the box, and about every 6 inches starting from one end, I'm gonna go ahead and pull that strap and nail it so that I don't have any bubbles in it, and it follows that line. It doesn't have to follow it perfectly, but I want it to look decent enough. And if I go about every 6, 8 inches, 12 inches and kind of work back a little bit, I'm keeping it straight enough. It doesn't need to be perfect. Straight enough with no bubbles in it. So once I shoot my way across, pun intended, I'm gonna go ahead and cut that strap off, and then I'm gonna go through and nail the whole thing. This is a 2.5 inch by 0.162 inch positive placement nail, and I need that longer nail because I'm shooting through the sheathing. The 4x6 blocking won't split. I've done this. It's not gonna split on me. And these are tested details. Yes, I need better snips and stronger hands. I fight this stuff every time I have to snip it. So I have already installed the strap above the header. Now I'm gonna go ahead, now that this lower strap is straight and it's tacked, I'm gonna go ahead and nail it off. Why didn't I do them at the same time? The short answer is because that gas-powered nailer gets hot because of the spark. It's igniting gas, that's how it works. Now it's time to just nail. Get into a rhythm. Okay, so if you didn't know what force transfer around opening is, you could Google it. But basically for us, I put the piece of tape on first, I snap a line. I'll end up posting video of this later, but that's all 2.5-inch nails. Billions of them. In fact, it's an infinite amount between there and there. It's just the way math works. Don't even get me started about metric. Okay, so I'm alone, if you didn't figure that out, and I'm tired, but I'm gonna tape and install these windows, tape and install the window, get out of here. In the morning, I'll trim it, and maybe I'll have some help to lip the wall. That wall, by the way, goes right here. And then it will be time to build this 2-story rake wall with the bump out on top of it that will look similar to that wall. I can't zoom, that's closer to us. Not that you even care. Okay, I think I will open myself up to criticism. So, tape run along the wall, snap a line on top of the tape, nail my coil strap, per the engineer. Then I tape my sill and stretch tape over the top of all of that. I don't believe that's going to leak. Who wants to wager some money? Oh, by the way, check out that sky. Who wants to wager me some money that that window is not going to leak? Oh, you didn't see that. Nope. Oh, happy Monday, everybody. I have the face of a pufferfish on prednisone this morning. Would you like to know why? Because Timmy did something he does not normally do. Normally I'm in bed by 9. Well, I was, but I stayed up late reading to finish a book. I haven't done that in years, because usually I just fall asleep in said book. And Kyle and I are starting at 6:30 all week because it's going to be hot. So, Tuck Pendleton, 0 defects. It was so hot when we were doing this. We were starting at 6:30. I think it was 80 degrees by 9 o'clock in the morning. And that, for us, that's hot. So we only ended up working, I think, till 11, getting out of there. Just too hot. Too hot for us. Okay, so let's talk about setting windows and walls before we lift them. What's the process? How do we make sure that they're level? So step 1 is that we want to flash the sill, a sill pan. So to do that, we use 6-inch zip tape and we cut it the width of that opening. So in this case, 2 foot, and we fold it over. Then it's 1-foot pieces of stretch tape so that it folds up 6 inches up the jamb. That stretch tape is amazing stuff once it's all rolled. Even though we have a seam, first of all, you should never get so much water that you should worry about the seam on the sill pan. If you have that much water, then something is seriously wrong with the rest of the install. So we, for all intents and purposes, or intensive purposes, have a seamless sill pan. Then I caulk the legs and the header piece, and I go ahead and set the window in the hole, and I pull it up to the top, or I guess in this case it would be bottom left. I put a mark, and I push it opposite, and I put a mark, and then I center it between that. I put a screw there, and then I pull the window so that it is parallel with the bottom plates. Because the bottom plates are level, I know that my window will be level. Parallel to level is level, and perpendicular to level is plumb. I squared the window just to show you, the viewer, that that's the next step that we take. It doesn't matter with picture windows. It's much more important with sliders and single hungs. Hey, since we're here, we might as well trim the windows, right? So we use a corrugated fastener gun to picture frame the window and set it as a unit, as you can see, much faster than biscuits or pocket screws. Then it's the head flashing, and we tape that to the wall. It was so hot. I don't think I've ever been. I think I could have taken off every piece of clothing and wrung it out. We were just beat after this. Okay, they're up. Up and away. We are back ordered on that window, so. Oh, hey, Kyle.
Hi.
Can you maybe demonstrate how horribly the window operates? I mean, those reveals.
I think it probably should just be thrown away at this point because it's just never going to operate correctly.
Oh man.
I hung this window without even looking too.
Okay, so that's what we mean by balloon framed. I'll follow that up later as we get more walls up, but 2-story walls, etc., etc.
Like imagine a balloon and you frame it.
So I had to work a day alone. Kyle was on vacation, and then I had a helper for the rest of the week. Shane's back, and it was good to work with Shane. I like working with Shane. He's got a good sense of humor, and he's nice and calm. So this wall, which in the spirit of post your mistakes, I will be showing you a major mistake. What I'm doing there while Shane's getting some things ready, I think one of them was filling up the forklifts with diesel, is I was doing all the ciphering on my stud heights because this wall is 2 stories plus a gable. So it's a little slow to get started. You've got layout. I want to go over a game plan with Shane, get those end studs. You're going to see how all of this goes together. But remember, because we're building big walls, the mistakes also get much bigger. And so it's best to slow down, and then once you get into a rhythm, you can start to go. Now, because we're using 2x6 Doug fir, and mostly it was nice looking material, but the longer the material, the more squirrely it gets. So here we get the skeleton framed, calculate the top plates, calculate the sides. I usually story pull it and do the math, double check myself. We're gonna go ahead and check it all for square before we lock those edges in, but already we made a mistake. This wall is 5.5 short where Shane is on the right. And that way my side wall, which you'll see in the next video, can run full length for siding. So all Shane had to do was pull it back to the 5.5. So for me, I find that when I do that, it's easier to cut my top plates as though it's an outside to outside number instead of an outside to butting. I'm sure that's clear as mud. You'll see it as it goes up. So then we make sure we get a square. While Shane reads me off numbers across the bottom plate, I calculate what the diagonal is and lay out the top plates, king studs and studs. And then we went ahead and snapped out the king studs and our longest studs. And the reason for that is we can tack them to the floor and keep it all nice and straight. It makes the blocking a little bit easier. It also means you can go into autopilot as you're framing. So Shane has our 1.75" by 9.5 LVL with the plate on top and on bottom. That's also going to form our fire stop. It's going to separate the lower portion of the wall from the upper portion right through the middle. Then it's a matter of double king studs for stiffness during the lift. I went ahead and cut those at the same time because I have a 10.25 inch skill cordless beam cutting saw made by Skill that was able to cut those bevels, which means once I have my long point, I get 2. I can double up my king stud without taking any additional numbers. So now it's a matter of Shane just nailing those together so that they're nice and smooth. If I've done my job as the cut man, I've opposed the crowns. And so as he nails them nice and flush, they're going to oppose each other and theoretically be straighter. Then he adds the trimmers and the header. And then we're going to go ahead and fill in. Now there's something really unique about this wall, and you'll see it in just a moment. Standard operating procedure for us is to always nail the windows together first before the studs on either side, and that way you have access for your tools like your nail gun, or in cases like this with a double king stud, we're going to use 5 or 6 inch long Simpson Strong Tie SDWS screws through both trimmers into the header because it sucks everything nice and tight. Now that the lower floor opening is set, it's time to work on the upper floor window. So I like to snap a line from the center of my bottom plate right to the peak. So it goes right across that header. Remember, we're already tacked to lines. We're square, we're parallel, all that good stuff. Now the king stud with the trimmer on each side can be installed, and it's going to keep things nice and parallel, centered on the peak, and of course, straight. That's our goal. I think these are 3050 windows where Shane is standing. You'll notice that we don't have headers at the top of the upper floor 3050s. And that's because they're rake walls, they don't need headers, there's no load there, realistically speaking, that can't be carried through the sheathing and just how it's all framed together. I've talked to our engineer about that, and the inspectors didn't have a problem with that on this job either. So it's a double 2x6, kind of flat, and then we're framing over the opening. The lower opening was bigger, and you're gonna see why in just a moment. So Shane's essentially laid out to bring that window exactly 3 foot off of the center column, and that's for our 305Os. But it allowed our double, maybe we even tripled those. Can't remember. No, they're just doubled. The double king studs to run from plate to the top. Now it's just standard framing. Shane's framing in the window. Notice that we do not have any cripple studs on each end of the sill. They provide no benefit structurally. Controversy. It's not in the code anymore. Then along that left-hand side, we run a full height. This is sheetrock backing, so it's a flat stud. Think California corner or L corner. We go ahead and run that full height because then when we nail that end stud to that, it keeps it nice, solid, straight. And that, again, just helps us have a nice straight edge when we bring that next wall in. So while Shane nails the double top plates at the top, then I'm gonna go ahead and start getting laid out for our blocking. I've already belabored the blocking point. I think you guys get the point at this juncture, so I'm just not even gonna talk about it. Again, here's the advantage of the fact that we went ahead and snapped our lines straight and tacked those studs straight. We can just go ahead and measure those blocks, and that way the blocking doesn't push anything out of parallel, put kind of a bow in anything. That blocking, the 4x6 blocking about even with the top of the header, that's our floor height. So remember, we're talking about fire stop. We want to separate the floor from the walls. So like if you're thinking in terms of a submarine or a ship, we want to be able to encapsulate each room and lock out air and fire. So from that, we can come down 8 feet, then it's flat blocks. We can go up 8 feet and it's flat blocks. It allows us to use up some scrap, gives us a nice big nailing surface, and there's just no advantage in putting them on edge. It's easier for the insulator to run his insulation as well in those wall cavities. What is this opening that I'm standing in? Well, you're going to see we have a bump out. So the bottom of that header is flush with the underside of the ceiling in that room. So we're using 104 5/8 studs plus 3 plates, 1 at the bottom, 2 at the top. We're about 109 1/8. So that's what we cut those trimmers so that that header is smooth with the drywall of the next floor. So Shane's packing sheets and I'm tacking and routing as I go. I'm gonna leave this in real time so you get a flavor for what's it really like to work with Big T and Shane. That's what I call myself. Most other people call me Timmy. You can call me Timmy too. I don't really care. Oh, and I should address too, one of the questions I got is, what is that nail gun? That is the Max high pressure framing coil nailer. So the nail that I use when we nail sheathing is a 2.5 inch by 0.131 inch nail. That is a true 8 common. So that's a framing gun. We can actually shoot siding nails with it, but it's a little less reliable for that. So our framing nails are 3 inch by 0.131, and our sheathing nails are 2.5 inch by 0.131. The coil nailer, what's the benefit? Much less reloading. I don't have to carry sticks and nails in my bags. And if I have a jam, I have clear access to the nose piece. The downside, they're heavier, except this is a high pressure coil gun. We run it about 280 to 300 PSI. You have to use the 500 PSI high pressure compressors. What that ultimately means is that the moving parts are smaller, the air chamber is smaller because it's higher pressure. So that gun with a full load of coils is still lighter than your Metabo, Hitachi, or pass load gun that only has 2 sticks and nails. The other downside is it's crazy expensive, but it is really reliable. We bought into this system way back in 2008 with the idea of increasing the longevity of our bodies, and I can only imagine tens of thousands of nails per job, and I'm carrying less weight on my wrist and in my bag, so anyway. Now, remember I said earlier that we held our framing back 5.5? That's because this wall is going to butt the wall that goes to the right there. So we're hanging our sheathing out 5.5, and we snap a line on the end so that we don't have any nails sticking out, but we hit that end stud. That sheathing is going to overlap the next wall. So as I mentioned in the last video, this really is like putting a big puzzle together, but if you can do 8 or 9 foot walls, you can do 16, 20, 30, you could do 50 foot walls. It's the same principle, just the studs get longer. But remember, if you make a mistake, it's often harder to fix. And yes, that is some foreshadowing. By the way, have you figured out the mistake on this wall yet? I bet you haven't, because I hadn't. It was really nice. Shane was more than willing to be the pack animal and the nailer. We always trade this stuff off so that no one person has to keep doing the same thing, because it just wears you out after a while. And the day before, working alone and doing that all myself, I was worn out. And that was only Monday. This is Tuesday. So this is one of the reasons I really love working with Shane, and I really miss him. We had a good time, and so it's like wherever possible, I want to work with Shane. So this was nice. So my job now at this point is just to fill in. Shane's going to go ahead and tack them for me, and then I'm going to route out those long angles. Typically, we don't run our sheets horizontally on gables because the waste is harder to use up. But in this case, it just made sense. It minimized the waste. So I'm going to go ahead and route that edge off once we get this sheet in. And then at that point, it's just filling in little pieces out of scrap, cleaning up, and then once Shane's done, we can tape the wall and move on to the next aspect. Now, I said this in the last video, but it's worth repeating here. Because we're saving so much time building big walls, we feel it's important to slow down and get the nailing just right. And that's what we've taught Shane. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I would rather the nails be set properly and the spacing done properly, maybe just a little tighter. And that way, a lot is riding on this wall, not just for the occupants down the road in an earthquake, but a lot is riding on it when we lift the wall. So the more confidence we have that we did a good job on things like nailing it off, the less stress there is when we go to lift it. You may or may not know this. I can't remember if I've mentioned it here on YouTube, but we are a family business that my dad started in 1978. So from the time I was a little kid, our prime directive, Star Wars reference, is to use up scrap. Try to make the most efficient use of materials. So when we're sheathing walls, we're like way, way low on the waste. Most of the window cutouts we're gonna be able to use up. So keep them close by. As you route and clean up your windows, stack them against the wall, blow off the surface, and just get used to using that router. Love it, so easy. Remember that big opening at the bottom of this wall? The bottom of that header is at the ceiling height. Well, now you know why we left it wide open like that, because we have a 1 foot bump out. So instead of framing that after the fact, let's just frame it on this wall, and let's go ahead and frame the roof at the same time. So this is just a little tiny, simple hip roof. I went ahead and used up a bunch of like scraps from our 2x12 footing boards. Great place for this. We do not need 2x12 structurally. So why am I using 2x12? To allow more room for insulation. Really easy to do the layout on this. All of the commons are the same length, including those end commons. That automatically centers the hip. And then once that's kind of tacked in place, I can just measure in the ledger. The reason I doubled the ledger is because I want the heels of those 2x12 little commons to be fully supported. Probably totally irrelevant, but good practice. So how do we keep the fascia and subfascia, and therefore the closed soffits, level? Oh, wait a second. What's going on here? Uh-oh. And it's right about this point that I realize I did not calculate the height of this wall correctly. Yep, that is the pure look of disappointment. Somehow, when I did all the math, I even found the board when I wrote it down, I was off by the heel stand of the rafter, even though, so literally, I had everything correctly written down, and I just transposed numbers. So I was off by like exactly 12 inches. I just reversed, I think, like a 21 to a 12. So, Bonehead of the Day award goes to Big T. But remember, awesome framers are not awesome because they're awesome framers. They're awesome framers because they're really good at fixing their boneheaded framing mistakes. But say that 3 times fast. Okay, let's go ahead and fast forward here. Now we're back. Since my floor is level, if I use a square, that becomes square to level, which is plumb, and literally. But once the wall goes up, that will turn back into level. If that makes any kind of sense. So I'm gonna put that 2x6 subfascia, I'm gonna plane it with the rafter, then I'm gonna check to make sure that it is square to the wall and put a mark. On the other end, I'm gonna measure up from the bottom plate to that mark and check it for square, and that's how I know that I'm level. It's square to a level wall. I know, try it a couple times, it'll make perfect sense. Go ahead and then nail on all of our 5/4 by 8 LP fascia board. It's our smart side trim. Then because we have those 2 square marks on the wall, we can snap a line and we can go ahead and nail 2x4 backing on the wall. That's what you see there. Now between that and the 2x6 subfascia, we have our nailing surface for our soffit. So there's really no rocket science to this, or as our engineer says, this isn't rocket surgery. It really is just a matter of starting out level, keeping everything square and parallel, and then build square. So 90 degrees off of level, of course, is 90 degrees vertical or plumb. Now we can go ahead and sheet this little roof. Try to use up your scrap. Like we said, that's our prime directive, which, yes, it's a Star Trek reference, not a Star Wars reference. So you can see, again, how much time we're saving by being able to do all of this while we have a nice, safe, level surface to walk on. Is it hard on the body? Yes. Pure and simple. So that's why we try to share as much of the load as we can, and thankfully we only have to do it this way every so often. Could be worse. We could be roofers or hardwood installers or drywallers. So, you know, at least we get to look good. And because this is zip system, right, we want to tape all of these seams, and it's just a lot easier to do it when you are not on a ladder. So this is part of the system that is going to dry in the house until the roofers get here. So just nice and simple. It beats being up 2 stories, right? Now we get a sense of what is this wall supposed to look like. Remember, I still have a mistake to fix, but we're going to come back to that in just a moment. So nice drone footage before lunchtime. Shane's job was going to be to install the roofing. Got a couple bundles there. As we come around the side here, notice the wall that I'm leaning on. The sheathing is sticking out 5.5 inches. That is going to nail into the wall that is currently being worked on. Looking at the bottom plates, you can see how we just built 2 little walls, landed this wall on top, built the windows into it, closed soffit. Shane's going on the eaves metal. Notice that the walls are strapped together at their top plates. As we set them, we go ahead and boom up in the little cage, and we strap them and connect them all. That way we're braced as much as possible as we go without bracing being in the way. So why all the drone footage? Come on, if you're building this and you had a drone, wouldn't you be taking footage too? It's just cool. That's what I meant in the first video. It was just fun. So here's Shane after lunch, getting the eaves metal on, and then he's going to start roofing. And it's my turn to start fixing a mistake. My mistake. So I take great pride in being able to fix my mistakes as quickly as possible, and usually documenting those for Instagram. Shane making nice, steady progress on the roof. There I am with the pry bar fixing my mistake. What? Where'd that overhang come from? Yeah, so basically the mistake was, and you'll see it when we go to lift. So the fix is to lift the overhang up. So basically the rafters would have projected past the overhang. So I just took the overhang off, and then I raised it the amount that I needed to get back to the right number according to the math. Stay tuned, you will see this momentarily. Oh man. I tell you what, I make mistakes so often, there's no point in sitting there and just feeling depressed about it. Just get into it and fix it. Okay, this is take what? 742?
70 million. I mean, 7. I mean, this is first try.
So how did I go about fixing this? Well, I used that Dude Tools pry bar, which is the best pry bar I've ever used, to lift that overhang enough that I could cut the nails with the Sawzall. We nailed the daylights out of that because it's part of how we keep the overhangs attached during the lift. So, on the bright side, it's built well. On the downside, it needs to be unbuilt quickly. And honestly, this didn't take that long. I think it took me a total of 20 minutes to actually yank the thing off of there. And then it was building up the plates, which I structurally screwed as I went, so it was strong. I mean, imagine basically like you're building a glue lamb as your rim joist. Like I needed, I think, 10.5 inches, or I forget what the number was. But by the time I was done with that, it's arguable that that was the strongest part of this wall. So anyway, Like Morgan Freeman said in Shawshank Redemption, better get busy framing or get busy dying. Now, you didn't think we were just going to stop at the roofing, did you? No way. We have the pre-primed cedar shingles installed over Benjamin Opdyke Slicker Classic. That's a rain screen, so it allows for an air gap behind those cedar shingles. We have a 5/4 by 8 belly band that is nailed on top of 2x material, and that way we can tuck our siding under that later. We have a nice shadow line. So as Shane's doing the field, I'm cutting angles for him and just keeping him stocked. And then it's my job to stay busy, so I'm cutting the shadow fascia. That's the piece of trim that will go on over the shingles, butted up to the soffit. Now, this is not particularly fun. I don't like shingling to begin with. It's not that much fun on your hands and knees. You'll notice that Shane, he kind of takes the roofer stance here in a couple minutes. Yep, there he is. So he knows. He's kind of lay sideways. You don't really need that many tools. And you just kind of grind away at this. Doesn't take very long, and guess what? We can side this and do all of this work faster than we could set up staging. So why not do it? Oh, and by the way, when it comes to shear inspections, I'll get into this in a little more detail in the next video. But in all these years, we've been doing siding on the gables for probably the last 15 years or more. Never had an inspector squawk because they don't get up that high and they know that if the stuff is nailed well, I mean, you guys can see, we're taking the time to nail it. And you know what? Turns out some of the inspectors follow us on social media. So they know what's going on when they're not around. And that has actually worked out to our benefit and theirs. But I'll get into the overall issue of shear inspections in the next video because we've got a big wall that we're gonna frame, sheathe, and side before we set it. Kind of like video 1 and video 2, but I'll be able to get into some of those kinds of questions in more detail then. So that was the last day I had Shane. I was sad to see him go. Like I said, I really enjoy working with Shane. We had a good time. Kyle is back from vacation. This is a Monday morning, and we are ready to lift this wall. And Kyle was really nervous. Why was Kyle so nervous, given that we lift these walls all the time, and we have together for years? It's because he knew I had made a mistake. We had Marco Polo'd and talked about it while he was on vacation. And so he wasn't there for this process. So he's just looking at this wall, and rightly so, wondering to himself, what other mistakes have I made? Or maybe what else did I miss and didn't think about? So he was more nervous. I wasn't nervous at all. I knew we'd done a good job, and I knew that the mistake that I made was fixed and was very strong. Now notice here that the wall does bow or bend. I would call that deflection, right at that roof, but not very much. So it's nice and stiff. We're not just building walls that are going to be strong enough when they're fully in place and finished, but we're building them strong enough for the lift itself. That's why we have confidence during the lift, even though Kyle was a little nervous. My goal as the operator is to be very gentle with the controls, with the brakes, and with the accelerator, because I have to drive forward while going up and or out. Notice that the top of that wall is moving toward me, but not a huge amount. That's because we're being gentle. So I'm driving down off of the hill because I want to get as close to the house as I can. We have nice stable ground there. Once we get to a point, Kyle's going to kind of eyeball, and if I'm in a good enough position, then I'll be able to put my outriggers down And now I can boom that wall all the way to the front of the house. So, the access that we had on this house, now you can see this was the perfect situation for us to be able to balloon frame. Nice solid ground on the back, pretty level, and plenty of reach with the forklift and truss jib to be able to lift those walls all the way to the front of the house. I've said this in past videos, good communication between Kyle and me in this case, so the operator and the signaler, is paramount. So at this point, Kyle wants me to very gently lower the boom, get the wall close to the floor. We always just try to keep our loads as low as possible. Once we feel like we're in a good situation to finish the lift, and by that what I mean is, if we're in a good enough position here, then I can go ahead and put my outriggers down. So Kyle's gonna eyeball, and he's gonna tell me he thinks that we're gonna end up right where we wanna end up. Go ahead and put your outriggers down. That now increases the ability that I can boom out. It gives me a lot of stability. So now I can just focus on whatever he tells me to do and being nice and gentle with the controls. So we're gonna kind of go out and down as we go. Our joystick's getting just a little bit sticky. So I can't really go out and down as well as we used to. So it's more out for a ways, then down for a ways. Out for a ways, then down for a ways. So we're gonna get into a spot. All those nails that were basically sticking out, it kept us nice and straight on the floor. He's gonna pound some of those out, and then we're gonna go ahead and just set this wall right in place. As soon as that wall's in place, we're gonna get up on the other forklift with the cage, and we're gonna tie it together and then install the bracing. Just like the last video, I'm leaving this in real time because then you see exactly how it goes. It's hard to draw lessons from time lapse, especially something like this. So you can see we are not in a hurry to set this wall. We've already saved loads of time building that roof, the bump out, roofing it. We would have installed windows, but you guessed it, they were all back ordered. Would have saved even more time, but anyway, that's life. Nice and slow. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Now pay close attention to what Kyle's doing here. He's twisted the wall. Remember that wall that we're butting, the sheathing hung out 5.5. He's able to use that as a pivot point. So he can slide that in. Then as I either boom out or down, remember as I boom down, the stick or the boom gets a little longer. So he's keeping that all in mind. As he kind of pins it into that corner, then as I boom down, he can rotate, and the goal is to land it right where it needs to go without needing to reposition. And yes, with a sledgehammer, we can persuade it, but it's always like a personal test to see if we can get it close enough that it just requires some very light bumping. What he's telling me here is to lean. And I'll do a video in the future that shows all of our signals. We've reduced the forklift signals down to one-handed signals. So by leaning, that bottom plate will be out of level, but that allows him to pivot. And then as I go down, it just gently rocks right where he wants it to be. Yeah, and by the way, this was the DJI Air 2S drone at the time. And did that thing stay stable? I did no stabilization in post-production. That's how steady that drone stayed. So, yep, you see that? Kyle was stressed, so he kind of shook it off. Now we just take one good look. Like, okay, now we're ready to brace it. So while I land the drone, Kyle's gonna go ahead and double check that it's on the line. He's gonna use those big Simpson Strong Tie SDWS big structural screws. These are the type for deck ledgers, right? That's what we're gonna fasten it down with because we can always move it, but it also pulls the wall down nice and tight. So there's the wall, it's up. Something I wanted to point out, when we've got the forklift cage, notice the rigging is still a little forward. The wall just gets like front heavy, top heavy, whatever the case might be. So it's still leaning out slightly away from us. We're gonna get the bottom anchored, and then we'll boom up with that forklift cage, push it and screw it together, and then strap the walls together. So there's the whole process. Not bad. Good job, Shane and Big T. You guys did a great job. Oh, so there's the fix. See where the rigging points are on the wall? Those yellow brackets? See how I just built those plates up? Oh my goodness. But it was strong, so there it is. Now we have one big wall left, and then the back wall, which is going to be standard height. And you're gonna see how all of that goes together in the next video. We're gonna frame the big wall on the left, the back standard height wall at the back. Let's get into the floor framing, and we'll also get into how we went about laying out for the siding. If the video is not too long, we'll also go ahead and do a walkthrough. You can see how it all finished out. If it is too long, then that will be in part 4. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging in there with this video. This is so fun. I probably ended the last video this way too. This really did make this process fun. It allowed us to kind of stretch out a little bit. And yep, even though I made the mistake, it was still fun. It's not fun to fix mistakes, but hey, that's life. See you in the next video. Stay safe, everybody. Take care of each other.
Okay, Hector, we're painting the butt ends.
His name's Julio.
The butt ends are painted, Hector.
Hey, Julio, how come we have to paint the butt ends?
You asking me or are you asking who?
Well,
about the butt
he's not
ends?
here.
Oh, he's not
Hey,
here.
Kyle, how come we have to paint the butt ends?
Well, we're deciding to not caulk our butt joints. We're going to do slip sheets behind.
So no more caulking of butt joints, just slip sheets on the butt.
No butt joints caulking, just slip sheets behind the butt joints, at the butt joints, and we have to put an additional layer of primer on the butt joints.
On the butt joints,
Yeah.
okay. We are all the way up to part 3 on balloon framing. This is our last wall, and I am not going to belabor it, I promise. First 2 videos were pretty long. The last wall goes on the right-hand side of the house. What we're doing here is we're squaring it. So just to answer some of the questions that we get, how do you make sure that your wall is plumb once you've lifted it? Well, how do we know that a square is a square or a rectangle is square? That's a bit of a mind bomb for you, because all squares are rectangles, but rectangles are not squares. Remember, a rectangle has 2 sets of parallel lines, but a square has 2 sets of equal parallel. Anyway, so our top and bottom plates are cut at exactly the same time, and therefore they are exactly the same length. So all we have to do is square the wall. Since the top and bottom are exactly the same length, we pull diagonals, and once those are the same length, we know it's square. Something to remember when you do this. If you're a 1/4 of an inch out, so let's just say this number was 200 and the other side was 200 and 1/4. I only need to move it 1/8 to make it perfectly square. So there's some Euclidean plane geometry for you. Moving on, because something tells me I might have just stated all of that incorrectly. Well, if it is, please post it in the comments below and we'll address it. Here's our standard way of doing our closed soffits. Remember, we've drawn out our bird's mouth so we know how far down to snap a line that the underside of the subfascia will be. So 2x6 gets nailed to the double top plates, 13 1/4 inch blocks get put in, plus the plates, that gives us 16 1/4, and that's LP vented soffit. Easy. Okay, we are getting ready to side this bad boy. We will be timing it because nobody is fast at siding horizontal walls than AwesomeFramers. Hey, Kyle. Where'd you get that sweet hat?
Oh, some dude gave it to me.
It's pretty cool. If you guys look real close on the hats, that's Kyle up on the roof. And that's me doing my best impression of Freddy Krueger.
I'm the one always working.
Yeah.
We are going to lay out this wall for siding. So what we do, our siding is 7 7/8 tall. Pick an arbitrary number to hang down past the mud sill. Right now we're going 1.5 inches. Mark 7 7/8. That's the top of the piece of siding. Then the remainder measure is about 5 1, 5 2. Burn that at the bottom of your bottom plate. We go increments of 6 for our tops. Find an increment of 6. Right here is 24. That is
What's the next one after 24?
20.
It's just 6 and 12.
2'6".
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always exciting. This is the last big wall, the last time we're going to install some siding. And it's almost lunchtime. So we're setting a goal to see how quickly we can get it done. Okay, mark the time. Let's see how long this takes us. I say it'll take us less than 3 days.
I hope not.
How long do you think it'll take?
Half an hour.
Half an hour, okay. So let me walk you through our approach to siding. On the right and left-hand sides of that wall, we've taped the zip panel and we've wrapped it to the side of the stud. Then we snap 1 inch, a parallel line all the way to the top. We do that on one side, and then we make the other line perfectly parallel to that first line. So we have 2 lines, top to bottom. You can see where Kyle's at on the left. You can still see a little bit of tape. What this allows us to do is we start out with a 16-footer and then we keep subtracting 4. So 16, 12, 8, and 4. That leaves 0 waste. Then you put a 16-foot piece staggering up each side of that, and then on the far right, we have custom lengths that we need to measure. But now here's the thing. Once we measure that for the first time, the cut guy can just keep doing his 16, 12, 8, and 4, and out of the scraps, he can cut then the filler pieces on the far right. Now, as we mentioned at the beginning of the video, we are not doing any caulking at the butt joints. Instead, we're following LP's instructions, and we're putting pan flashing, which is just a little 5x8 piece of metal that we buy for about 50 or 60 cents a piece. We have an additional coat of paint on those butt joints. That's why they show up white. That is per LP's detail. What this means is that the panel, as it gets wet, can expand, if it will expand, and that the homeowner doesn't have to do any maintenance on those butt joints. So easy for us, saves a lot of time and headache for the homeowner down the road. Since this is a little hard on the lower back, we switch off halfway through. Because what are we, hardwood flooring guys? No way. By the way, out of those measurements, we only had 6 inches of waste per course. Okay, Kyle and I were both wrong. We switched off halfway through because it fills your lower back with galactic acid. I think that was about 50, 55 pieces. I'll put the timestamp because I don't actually know what time it is. Anyway, we're gonna lift this guy after lunch. It's gonna tie in there, come across. This back wall will be standard height so that we have access to lift materials, like setting some of our beams.
Hey, did you guys know that we have a new AwesomeFramers member for our crew? It is the Mini Form Busters by Dude Tools. This dude is amazing. Good job, Mini Form Buster. Good job.
So those yellow brackets were custom engineered for us. We have the engineer's stamp and custom fabricated. That way we're legal when it comes to rigging, and we know what our ratings are and what our loads are. And that Dude Tools Form Buster is like the bomb biggity. We loved our Birk Bar Juniors, but some stupid kids stole them out of the wall cavities. So we bought the Form Buster, and I love those things. We recently did a foundation, and they're great. They're just great. This is the last of the big walls to lift. Went in like a dream. That 16-inch soffit, again, acts like a strong back, keeps those top plates nice and straight, means less braces down the road, and nice and stiff during the lift. And now we are ready for our one standard height exterior wall on the main floor. That's a 9-foot wall, but doesn't it look tiny? So there it is. We have our block line. We're gonna have sheathing that connects down through the rim to the mud sill. Our sheathing is run 3/4 of an inch up on the rim that is already pre-attached. There's our guardrail. That's the only guardrail we needed to put except around the stairwell openings. You might have noticed in the previous 2 videos, and if you didn't, you're gonna notice now, we don't overlap any of our top plates, so they're all square cut. That makes it much easier to put together. What about strength? Easy. We just strap all those walls with the same CS coil strap that we used around those windows that the engineer spec'd. If it's good enough for earthquakes, it's good enough for earthquakes. Hey, that's my ankle. 4,000 years. Come on now, come on now. Back. Just there. From your tears. Hey. Yeah, this is so much easier. I really wish I was walking a wall, Kyle. Okay, let me retoenail that because I did a bad job.
Why do they call them toenails? Don't shoot my foot. Oh, my word.
I think the rest looks pretty good.
Yeah, you should be able to. Okay.
All right. Kyle gets to do the blocking.
Yeah, I cut it.
So the rim is attached, the sheathing is nailed through that. We have our guardrail installed, we'll just have to fill in on the ends. Yes, right now the stairwell is not protected. It's only Kyle in there. He's very cognizant of it. As soon as this wall's up, we go ahead and reinstall that guardrail. So it only comes down for a few minutes. What Kyle does is he gets it on the line and then he's able to use one of those Simpson Strong Tie SDWS big structural screws at each end. And now we are locked in. We can go ahead and beat the bottom to the line, nail it down, and we are good to go. Since this wall is sandwiched between the wall to the left and the wall to the right, as you go up as the operator, go nice and slow. That gives your spotter a chance to see if it's pinching anywhere. And if it is, he can kind of bounce those big tall walls and let it unpinch, so to speak, unbind. Is that even a word? You get the point. And we made it to the floor framing. So we cut a 2x4, 109 and 1/8, and make sure that it matches our back wall. It's gonna be somewhere between 109 and 1/8 and 109 and 1/4. So whatever that back wall is, that's what you wanna cut it. We go ahead and we spot that at all corners. We snap lines on the long runs, and on short runs we don't. We just align the rim board, which is now a ledger. It's not a rim. So, super easy process. But let me just walk you through a couple of the things that we do. The attachment of the 2x10 ledger, just like a deck ledger, we tack it with nails, and then we use Simpson Strong Tie SDWS 5-inch screws with the correct fastening schedule that they provide. And that's good enough for our engineer. Now, some people freaked out on Instagram when I showed this because they thought, well, I don't want to rely on the fasteners, never mind that the whole house relies on fasteners. But if there's something to notice, first of all, like there, we go ahead and we snap our line, and we're gonna line everything up so that it lands on studs. You can also see that our fire block line, those 4x6s, that's right there at the top of that 2x10. This is a very common detail in light commercial. Our ledger is supporting the floor, but all of our exterior walls are supporting the loads all the way from the roof, all the way down to the foundation. So yes, we are relying on these big structural fasteners, but that's okay because they've been engineered, tested, and a safety factor applied. So this floor is way stronger than it needs to be. It's way stronger than any loads that it will ever see, maybe is a better way to say it. One thing to note here, notice the fire blocks to the right where I'm at and to the left where Kyle's at. In the middle, we don't have any fire blocks. We had flat blocking for the sheathing. That's because the top plate on that single ply LVL effectively seals that cavity, and the cavity can only go as high as the window up above. So it's not gonna get into the floor system because of the rim, and there's nowhere else for it to go. So if you see some blocks missing, that's the thinking there. Now, I bet you there's a few of you that are thinking, well, this is a lot slower than running around and installing rim on top of the walls. All told, it only took us an hour to run all of the rim and screw it all to the wall and lay it out. Yes, it's off ladder work, but there is no place for us to fall. That 6060 window is closed, not gonna fall through it, and everywhere else we've eliminated the height hazard. And since the rim on the back wall was installed before we lifted it and laid out, we don't have to get up there either. So I would rather personally, and a lot of this is preference, excluding safety rules, I would rather spend some time on a ladder. It's only a couple steps up, even for a short guy like me. And I need the training for hiking anyway, so that's my opinion. my opinion only, is I would much rather do this than get around and run around on the walls.
Okay, I'll do that in. I'll put this guy in.
Good.
8 and 11. Hey!
Here it is in real time how those 6-inch or 5-inch SDWC, I never remember what our box is, SDWC structural screws. These are the same screws that you would use to attach your deck ledger if you were building yourself a deck. It goes all the way in, right through the end of that 2x6 stud, and they don't split. They are remarkable screws. So we prefer the 5-inch screw length, but sometimes we use the 3-inch, which usually we just use for our guardrails. So right there, that's a 3-inch screw, and that I only put that in because the 2x10 was a little bit cupped. For all of the actual structural connections, 2 foot on center, as well as into all of the king studs, we use the 5-inch screws. I think we were still using up the tub of 6-inch.
Just not getting it. So, other than that, I think it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I say we joist all this and then we try the ledger and straighten out that wall.
Okay. All right, so 14 footers.
So this house was designed with I-joists, clear spanning, running east-west. You notice though, we're installing 2x10s north-south or front to back. That's because lumber prices had skyrocketed, and so I asked our engineer, can you spec beams in these locations and verify that 2x10s 24 on center will meet the span rating, as well as, comfort and vibration, all that good stuff. And so he did, and he didn't even charge us for it. This is why I love this guy so much. Prices had gone up so much, our lumber salesman called us and said, I-joists are gonna go up $4 a foot, and they don't have enough to even do the floor as is. So essentially, we'd have to wait until they came in, and we'd pay $4 more a foot after prices had already doubled. Yeah, so you wanna know how much money we saved? We figure about $8,000. The logical question is, what are the trade-offs? Well, one, the beam depth is more than the joist, and so that's gonna get boxed around with drywall. But that was a cosmetic thing that we know our customers couldn't care less about. And number two is the fact that we're not using I-joists, so I-joists are known for being about perfectly straight. But these spans are so short, and the dug fir that we get here, our 2x10s were nice. We just crown them as we go and cull out the ugly ones. So our customer will not be able to tell the difference between the I-joist floor that was spanning 20 feet, clear spanning 20 feet, and a 2x10 24 on center that is spanning 12 feet. So now it's just a matter of getting into rhythm. Crown the rafter, climb the ladder, nail them through the hanger, turn up the music, rinse, lather, repeat. These are, I think, Simpson Strong Tie LUS 210 hangers, so they're double shear, which means 2 16-penny nails, hand drive through the flanges, and that allows for less nails overall. So I just hand nailed. Felt good. Felt like I was 15 again, and the guys wouldn't let me use a nail gun, so I had to learn how to hand nail. Love will never. And of course we get to the rim and we have a bow in it. Easy. We flipped it over. That put the end up off of the plate on my end. One of those structural screws up from the bottom, through the plates into the rim, pulled it down nice and tight. Now we can nail it off. Because we're on ladders, we want to finish everything as we go. So Kyle cuts me some drywall backing. I can install that. That way we don't have to come back and do it later. Okay, I want to show you around the house. So this is the third time in the last year and a half that we've built this floor plan, but this time we were able to do what we had wanted to do the previous 2 times, and that is build the walls full 2-story height at one time, balloon frame them. Couldn't do it on the other sites, it was too wet, forklift would get stuck, but this site, it works out perfectly in the back. So let me show you what the thought process was and how we went about doing this. There's quite a lot to show. First of all, what is balloon framing? Balloon framing is full height walls. Normally we would platform frame like this guy. So 9-foot wall, joists on top, and then normally we would have the wall above that. This time we went all 18 feet. That stud length was 212 inches. Give you kind of just a frame of reference. So we started with this guy, framed it full height, set the window sided on the outside, what we could, frame the fireplace bump out attached to the wall so it leaned out right over the cantilever. That wall's 2 stories high. We were able to set the windows that we had before we lifted the wall. Let me take you over here. This has 4x6 blocking because that is entirely strapped across for shear loads. And then it continues on up. So you get the point. Balloon framing is full height walls uninterrupted by the floor. This particular wall, I framed the bump out on the outside of it. We framed the roof. That is fully sheathed and roofed so that we didn't have to do anything off ladders. Soffits are all installed. This wall here, full height, fully sided, all the way down to about here. We'll tie that in to the mud cell. Okay, a couple things I wanted to show. We keep a few I-joists in our boneyard because we use them as strong backs when we form foundations, but because the studs can get a little squirrely, with just like maybe 4 screws, specifically, let me show you. With these on just a few studs, it basically pulls that wall into line. We set the beam. This is a nice continuous load path all the way across to tie the house together. It also minimizes bracing, but that I-joist saves us a ton of work and quite a bit of bracing. Takes like 3 minutes to install. So how does the floor system attach? Well, obviously in the back, we went standard height. So this is platform framed. Joists are on top of the wall, and that allowed us to have access from the back. With the truss jib, we can actually reach to the very front of the house, so all of these walls were set from the back with the truss jib. I love that thing. Oh, I love that thing. So floor system lands on the wall there. It's ledgered everywhere else, so just like a deck. So we nail them into the sides because there's almost no load. And then all of the ledgers get 3 6-inch SDWS screws basically behind every joist hanger all the way across. And you can see we threw in a couple extra. You can see how that works. That's all there is to it. We made sure and used the right size nail in the hangers, the double shear, because that's helping to hold the wall to the floor system. Floor system sheeting, of course, will go and nail into all of that. So, why did we decide to do that? The short answer is, this is a 3-story house out the front, plus the gables. So the gable up there, and you'll see this in the B-roll, it's already sided. We want to eliminate high work and ladder work wherever possible. So for just a little extra time on the ground, we don't have to get on ladders later. This is massive, by the way. That means that for every wall, we only rig it one time, we only lay out one set of plates, we only pack studs one time, we never have to go get material to sheet the wall and then do the same thing above. We do that all at once. Additionally, there's almost no shrinkage in the wall at each floor, especially summertime. These studs have been out here for a while, they are bone dry. So that means less drywall cracking down the road. So for Kyle and me, as a two-person crew, we're able to do almost all of our work flat on the deck. It's safer, it's easier on us. It's a little scary to lift those walls, but we're rigging certified, forklift certified, all that good stuff. We've done it for a long time, and we've got custom engineered, fabricated, designed, and approved lifting brackets, so we know that we're good and safe on all of that. I should probably point out my mistake though. You'll see it in the B-roll. Somehow I did all of the math right on this front rake wall, so it's 2 stories plus the rake. And then I wrote down the wrong number. So it was 11 inches short. So anyway, live and learn. Always, you know, AwesomeFramers never makes the same mistake twice. So thousands of mistakes in, we're still finding ways to make new ones. You'll see it with the drone footage. Basically, I built up those plates before we lifted the wall. This is the face of an idiot. Ah, man, never get overconfident. I wasn't even overconfident, I'm just an idiot. So anyway, we're gonna we're gonna frame the stairs tomorrow, and then we're going to sheet it. I feel like there's something else I was gonna show. Anyway, when this lands on YouTube, there's gonna be tons of B-roll showing the siding, hanging windows, trimming the windows. We were able to do all of that. Well, almost all of it. We were a few windows short, like maybe 80%, 85%. We were able to do it before lifting the wall. So, work smarter, not harder. Okay, I gotta get out of here. There's nothing left. Oh, I know. For those of you that are skeptical, can you really set a window in a wall before you lift it and have the reveals look good? Will it operate correctly? I'm not gonna lie, they're not always this good, but this one's pretty stinking good. The reveal looks good all the way around the frame. Boom. Ah, it's so easy. Doesn't always work out this way, but oh man, when we can do this kind of stuff, it makes work more fun. It's safer, it's faster, it's more efficient, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? It's more fun. That's to me. We save loads of time, so you get to justify it that way. Okay, so there's the floor all framed. We just have to add a little bit to the guardrails on each side. We like to frame the stairs before we sheet the floor, so that's gonna be the next step. All of our layout started at that bottom right corner, moving from right to left and from bottom to top. So 2 foot on center, everything stacks. Now, if you look really closely, notice that we have an I-joist screwed to the wall, the big tall walls on the left and on the right. We keep those in our boneyard for foundation work, but it reduces the amount of bracing that we need to do, and it pulls all of those long studs straight, nice and flat. Then once we sheet the wall, actually it'll be one of the last things we take down as we work from the roof all the way back down to the basement. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something. Like I always say, we're not doing it the best way. We're just doing it the way that works well for us at this point. Everything is iterative. I follow a former engineer for the Starlink system, awesome Milky Way photographer. Lonely Speck is his name, Ian Norman. And he talks about engineering as an iterative process. You just know that when you do something, the next time you do it, you'll improve. And I guess that would describe this process for us. We've never actually balloon framed the entire house like this. We've just balloon framed select walls. But this is definitely something we're going to keep doing. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the next video.